Coming up on American Black Journal, a look at what's being done to include the voices of Michigan's African-American women in the nation's political agenda. Plus, we'll examine the connection between race and the construction of our freeways. And we'll meet a Detroiter who's making a name for herself in the entertainment industry. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts right now.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, MASCO Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. MASCO, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by NISSAN Foundation. Ally. UAW. Solidarity Forever. Impact at Home. And viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. African American women played a huge role in deciding this year's presidential contest. Polling data suggests that more than 90% of Black women voted for Joe Biden. Now, AARP of Michigan wants to make sure that those African American women have a say in setting the political agenda here in Michigan and in Washington. The organization held a virtual conversation that led to the creation of a 4-year health and wealth agenda for Black women ages 50 and older. I spoke with the state director for AARP Michigan, Paula Cunningham, about how to lift the voices of Black women. Paula Cunningham of AARP, welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Look forward to chatting with you and appreciate all the good work that you do.
It's great to have you with us. So let's start about this health and wealth agenda for African American women. And I'll say up front that AARP kicks in when people turn 50. That may have just happened to me in the last.
Welcome. It's a good place to be. You live your best life after you're 50 and above.
Oh, that's true. But tell me about this health and wealth agenda for Black women over the age of 50.
Yes, and it really it's over the age of 50, and for all of our future centenarians and others who want to reach that milestone. We had an event where we pulled together almost 500 African American women throughout the state to ask them about their health and wealth agenda in October, and it was amazing to hear the stories that the more things change, the more they stay the same in so many ways. Issues around health, issues around wealth and access to wealth. People often say, you're looking for change in this next administration. Well, quite frankly, Stephen, we are the change. We are the hope that we want to see. We are the hope. We are the change for the future. And so some of the things that we want to see happen, that we'd like to see change, regardless of who's sitting in the White House, is more access to health. People who are over the age of 50 who are caregivers, more women are caregivers than men. I think something like 60% of women are caregivers, 1 in 5. We have 22 million African-American women in the United States, 22 million, and we spend $1.2 trillion. That's our economic buying power. So we have a voice. We have a voice, and that voice needs to be lifted, and it needs to be heard, and it needs to be acted upon. And some of the things that folks want to see actually is again, major source of growth in Black businesses. There's been some major entrepreneurial initiatives out there, but still lack of access to loans, business loans, lack of access to venture capital, lack of access to government contracts. And so we will figure out what we need to do to be innovative, creative, and entrepreneurial, but we need the same access to resources that others receive. When it comes to Black women as well, you just look at what we earn on a dollar. I think it's 61 cents for every dollar that our white male counterparts earn. That's ridiculous, because there's even white males will say that Black women work harder, twice as hard or 3 times as hard as we always have as anyone else. And to only earn 61 cents on a dollar is another change, that we'd like to see. And as a result, in health, we're all COVID. We're thrilled that a vaccine may be on the horizon. Will it be affordable? Not only that vaccine, but what about your blood pressure medication or your heart medication? Access to lower prescription drug prices is another area that the Black women have continuously, and AARP has continuously fought to make certain that we have access, even in our food deserts and our nutrition and in urban communities, and you're not having a grocery store or anything green for a mile or 2 miles away. Is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so the playing ground isn't level. It's never been level, and it seems like it's getting a little bit bumpier. But the good news here is that there's so many African American women who are coming together, lifting their voices to say, we want to see some changes.
So where does that day start? Can't just count on change in administration in the White House, even though Joe Biden is a Democrat, even though his vice president is going to be a woman who's African American. You can't necessarily assume that the policy changes will follow. So how do you make sure that there is a shift away from at least the last 4 years, if not the last 50, in the way that?
Yeah, if anyone thinks this is an overnight, you push a button and everything changes, then you're going to be very impatient. You're going to get very impatient, very frustrated. These systemic racial disparities have existed for a very, very, very long time. And it's going to take a collective will of the people, and particularly our voices as well, to continuously be lifted up with our local elected officials, with our state, as well as our federal elected officials. Who we vote into office is important, whether they're Democrat or whether they're Republican, as long as they advocate for the issues that we are important to us. And so, not AARP is nonpartisan. We don't have a PAC. We don't get it. We're nonprofit, nonpartisan. But we go after the issues. We listen to the voices of the people, find out what it is that they want to see and what they, what's important to them and their families, and that becomes our advocacy agenda. And particularly whether it's Hispanic, Latino, whether it's African American, we're listening to make certain that everyone has the same access to healthcare, to wealth, to lower prescription drug prices. Social Security, we've heard over and over again about, we might have to have some cuts in Social Security. Do you know how many people depend on that for their livelihood? They retired as a result of that. So that's another change to writing your legislator, calling, talking to folks, having listening sessions like we did in October when we had, the women kept coming together. We sent that agenda to every elected official and said, here's what folks in Michigan, African American women in Michigan, a battleground state, a swing state that you're going to always pay attention to. And, women vote. We vote more than men do. We go to the polls at a 68% percentage in terms of African American women. We vote. Our voices are heard. So, we just have to hold people accountable. And again, I don't look for someone else to make these changes or to say, what do you want? We've got to lift our own voice up. We are the power. We're over $1 trillion in economic, in our economy, consumer spending. Look at what happened in the polls, in Detroit, and how we can make the change that we want to see. We just have to be consistent and continue to beat the pavement and talk to our elected officials. And pay attention to who you're bringing in. It's not who's the cutest or the tallest or who talks the smoothest, but who's going to get something done. And just the fact they're sitting in the White House or sitting in Congress doesn't mean they're going to get it done unless we continue to make those phone calls, continue to push that agenda in front of them, and continue to talk about the issues that are important to all of us, but particularly to Black women in this case.
I want to talk specifically about wealth building, which is something that it's not just an issue for African American women, but all African Americans, right? What are the things that you think people need to be focusing on in that realm after 50?
Well, after 50 and even before 50, quite frankly, one is huge, is financial security. the people, the fastest growing segment of our population are people who are 85 and older. That's good news. Yay, that's wonderful news. 80 and older, we're going to live a long time. The bad part of that is that we don't have the financial resources to have the same quality of life once we get that age and beyond. And so financial security and making certain that you have access to savings. Right now, it's such a complex industry. You don't know who to trust, who not to trust. There are fees up front, there are fees at the end. And so we are consistently lobbying our state legislators to have some kind of a work and save program, to have the state even have some kind of a work and save program where people can put money, even if it's 1% or 2%. It's amazing what that will do. If you're 50, if you start when you're 50 or 45 and you go through the age of 65 or 75, but some kind of additional financial security in the work and save program. Also to make certain that there aren't any cuts, not only are there not any cuts to Social Security, but that we grow it, not just necessarily according to the consumer index, but that we grow it. I mean, in terms of our wages and the cost of living, all that changes significantly. So that's something else that people need to pay attention to. And then your own health. People think about retirement, but they don't think about how I'm going to have my insurance might be gone. My employer paid so much for my insurance. Now I'm going to pay for that insurance. Is it affordable? Is it accessible? Can you get the prescription drugs that you need? Why do people go to Canada to get prescription drugs? I mean, that's insane. It's absolutely insane. Why aren't we manufacturing those drugs at a rate that people can afford them right here? We've interviewed so many people, Stephen, who have cut their medications in half because they had to make a decision whether to take the medication or to pay their rent or to pay their mortgage or to pay their car note. And we should not have to have those kinds of decisions. And so making certain that you have healthcare coverage as you get ready to retire, as you age, and that healthcare coverage is something that you're going to have for a very, very long time. I know there's a lot of talk about the ACA, and it's been phenomenal for a lot of folks, but is it going to still be around? What's going to be available? And is the cost going to be prohibitive for folks who one day will find themselves on a fixed income? So financial security, your health, making certain that you actually have access to medical treatment. It's absolutely mind-blowing when you think how people miss a doctor's appointment because they can't get there based on transportation, or because they just don't have the money, or they don't have, for a multitude of reasons, they just miss their doctor's appointments. So having access to good quality health care is another one. If you've got health and wealth, you can just about make anything else work. But those are two important elements that we continue, or two important issues, not elements, issues that we continue to advocate for and will continue to advocate for.
Turning now to a story about race and the nation's highways. Historically, race has been a major factor in how cities across America developed. The construction of freeways was often done at the expense of Black and brown people and their communities. One Detroit associate producer, Will Glover, looks at how highways are often considered symbols of structural racism because of how and why they were built.
You could look at any other part of the country and you would say you can't have a strong region without a strong city. Right? I would say the racism here was so deep that they were willing to kill the city in spite of themselves.
Detroit, the crossroads of half the population of the United States, is but minutes away.
Starting in the late 1950s, construction on the I-75 and I-375 highways cut through some of Detroit's most prosperous Black neighborhoods of Black Bottom and Paradise Valley, which rivaled New York's Harlem and Tulsa, Oklahoma's Black Wall Street. Thousands were displaced, erasing generations of wealth. Some call these highways Detroit's largest monument to racism. This is Detroit historian Jamon Jordan.
Historically, the building of these freeways affected the whole country. It didn't just affect Detroit. But largely, one of the major areas that they affected almost everywhere they went was African-American communities.
But could there be a way to rebuild the wealth and opportunity for the next generation of Black Detroiters? I spoke with freelance writer Nithin Vijendala, whose recent article on Detroit highways being racist appeared in the Detroit Free Press.
Start with how a freeway could possibly be a symbol of racism.
So you look at the construction of the freeways, and they were routed primarily through Black neighborhoods, because at that time, and still even now, Black communities had less power, had less political power to be able to resist these kind of really disruptive changes. And because of racist redlining policies, land and houses and homes in Black neighborhoods were worth far less than homes in white neighborhoods.
The winner of the Detroit wasn't the only city being dissected by highways. In fact, the man who set the national trend for city planning started in New York City. His name was Robert Moses.
Robert Moses, New York City construction coordinator, is a world-famous highway planner, a man who knows his business.
In a 1974 biography, it was said Moses suggested suburbs make the water in their community pools colder to keep black people from swimming with whites. Closer to home, it was Detroit Mayor Albert Cobo who put together the plans to build the freeways that in 1956 would decimate Black Bottom and Paradise Valley.
Now, there are arguments, did he do it because he's a racist and destroyed what was left of a black community, or did he do it because it was the most feasible place to put a freeway? And so arguments go both ways, but looking at the history of Cobo, his acts, his policies, and his ideas about the African-American community, it's pretty clear that this was not a coincidence.
This is Wayne State University law professor and director of the Damon J. Keith Center for Civil Rights, Peter Hammer.
Think about structural racism and think about how structural racism is defined at the Keith Center. We're looking at the interinstitutional dynamics that produce and reproduce racially disparate outcomes over time. When the freeways were started, everybody thought this, white people particularly, thought this is development. And it was also thought of necessary for part of a national plan of interstate networks, and also for the creation and cohesion of the suburbs. Now you have to sort of imagine that that's the city of underwriting its own demise, right? So the expressways were thought, well, these are easy ways for Detroiters to go out to the suburbs and come back. There are also easy ways for Detroiters to go out to the suburbs and never come back.
Sleeves rolled up, Detroit levels and shifts and carves the contours of a new city. And a new spirit of progress matches the vision of its people.
What was I-75 before it was I-75, right? And it was Hastings Street. And Hastings Street ran up and down Paradise Valley, which was the most important and most concentrated African-American business district and living district anywhere in the city. So Tulsa has got a lot of attention lately for very legitimate reasons. And they called that the Black Wall Street, and that was destroyed by a race riot. Detroit's Black Wall Street was destroyed by quote-unquote development and the construction of the expressways and the destruction of Paradise Valley. And people who run up and down I-75 today have no clue.
Detroit is borrowing funds to build more miles of expressway, and build them today instead of years from now.
The question now, can Detroit reverse the process? That is, remove freeways. Cities like Milwaukee and San Francisco already have.
You look at San Francisco's Embarcadero Freeway was heavily damaged in an earthquake in 1970. Instead of repairing it, they simply just removed it. And when they did that, traffic didn't significantly increase. It didn't cause massive traffic jams, and it significantly improved quality of life for a lot of people.
I spoke with civic engagement expert and dean of the School of Architecture at the University of Detroit Mercy, Dan Patera.
What is the economic impact, to the extent that you can speak on it, of undertaking such a project?
Think about what a scale of a project like this would do, and think about the numbers, the thousands of jobs that could truly be generated across the decade of time, from planning, engineering, surveying. It really is we're talking thousands upon thousands of jobs that are possible, which then means that we have to then not just plan for the jobs, but plan for the preparing and working with people to be ready for those jobs.
The Michigan Department of Transportation was to soon start the removal of I-375 in downtown Detroit, but the project was delayed because of the pandemic.
Do you think that removing the highways is an opportunity to address some of these, historically, systemically racist issues?
No, I don't think you could make any credible connection to removing highways in today and undoing the harm that was done.
The filling in of I-375 it's not harming the African-American community, but it won't bring Black Bottom back.
Many believe that undoing the damage to Black American communities in cities like Detroit means investing in Black neighborhoods at the same scale and with the same resolve white suburbs received during urban renewal.
It's just a matter of who has the power. Which means that at the end of the day, if you're not changing the belief system, right? The sort of highly racialized belief system that have created this history, then you have no chance of digging yourself out of the hole. So a lot of effort has to be of really intentionally reshaping the white mind, right, in a way that can transcend the sort of white supremacist heritage that we have received.
Regarding that stretch of freeway connecting the Chrysler Freeway to the downtown riverfront, I-375, what some can't help but see as a major symbol of racism will remain for a few more years. Maybe then the many millions of dollars needed will return to state coffers, allowing for it to be filled in and receive a proper burial.
And finally today, we want to introduce you to Alex Way from Detroit. She is a 2018 Kresge Artist Fellow who began playing the violin at age 12. Alex is also a singer and a songwriter who has performed with acclaimed musicians like Marcus Belgrave, Al McKenzie, Marion Hayden, and Regina Carter. Here's her story.
I never thought he'd notice me, 'cause around here he's a star. But then one day he noticed me and started a spark. Growing up, my parents were very particular about what that music they let us listen to. NDRE was like probably one of the few R&B artists that they would let us listen to. And I remember one time we were in the car and I was singing along to the NDRE song. Like everybody stopped and turned around and looked at me in the back seat, and I was like, "What are you looking at?" And my brother was like, "You can actually sing." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." My whole family kind of already is into music. At our church, we had an orchestra every Sunday. And I knew I always wanted to play violin when I saw that. But before that, I was singing in choir, and we would sing in children's choir and sing pretty much every Sunday. I like writing about love a lot. All my teachers who taken the time to teach me, to give me all those extra lessons, that's love. Any musician who's worked with me, and even though I haven't been rolling in money to pay them, they've showed up for rehearsal, learned the music, that's love. My family, that's love. My friends, that's love. I think my whole life is a reflection of love. Things happen live, on stage, you vibe off of the other musicians, or you interactions with the audience. In studio and recording, you get to hear just the things that you're trying to record, and you get to hear it all in a tangible form. Hang out, have fun, and start something beautiful. Something beautiful. We're both a little older now, moving on to bigger things now. He has his dreams, I have mine, and it turns out they both coincide. I never thought we'd make it this far, but here we are. He's my best friend, and I thank God for the day.
That's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for watching. You can always find more about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
From Delta faucets to Behr paint, MASCO Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. MASCO, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV,
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by NISSAN Foundation, Ally, and viewers like you. Thank you.